This is our first Zoom Ancestry dual citizenship meeting. It's a seminar slash forum. So we've brought on and partnered with the Cleveland Italian Ancestry Organization, a lot of folks from Northeast Ohio who are deeply engaged in genealogy and ancestry, family history research. And ISDA partnered with CIAO a few weeks ago to put this initiative in motion. And it was the original idea of our national vice president, Joe Rosalina. Joe had recognized the fact that a lot of folks right now are pursuing dual citizenship and are entering into various phases of their ancestral journeys. You know, perhaps you're starting from scratch to learn more about your family roots, or maybe you're looking to deepen that journey. And so we thought that we begin to build a community among ISDA members, among CIAO members, to come together to learn a little bit more about our backgrounds. So I appreciate all of you being on the call today, and we have 150 folks, so there's certainly a good bit of interest. And Tom, if you'd like to unmute and take it away. Tom Cirincione is the president of the Cleveland Italian Ancestry Organization, CIAO, and he knows quite a bit about ancestry and genealogy. And we brought on a couple of folks as well to discuss dual citizenship. So, Tom, please take it away and offer an intro.
Well, thank you very much, John. I appreciate you having us here on this call. It's been really exciting for us really to be partnering with ISDA. This is new for us. We're still a fairly small group, so we really appreciate you taking the time to hear what we have to talk about today. And we're really appreciative of both John and Austin and any other folks that really helped in getting our new website off the ground. Long overdue, since we've been around since 2008. But so we really appreciate that. And so we're getting the ball rolling with a new website. With me today I should introduce myself again, president and co-founder of CIAO, which is the Cleveland Italian Ancestry Organization. But I also have with me our new vice president, John Valillo, and also Dave Sansone is also on the call. Dave was one of the co-organizers of our first participation in the Little Italy Columbus Day Parade in Cleveland. So Dave is on the call. Both John and Dave will, after I'm done with my portion of the presentation, we'll talk about dual citizenship, because I know a lot of you have an interest in that. I also want to take just a moment here, if there are any folks, I know some of our folks from CIAO might be on the call. If you are on, if you don't mind, if you're not embarrassed to do so, just identifying yourself and saying hi, and that's it. So I'll kind of leave it open to anyone who wants to unmute themselves and say hi.
Hey, Tom. Stacy Murray, co-founder of CIAO with Tom back in 2008, and the program director. And we are very pleased to have, this cooperation between the groups. And I want to point out that education is very important to us. I mean, last year we had an all-day seminar on Zoom with Rich Venezia from Philadelphia, and we constantly have great programs coming up. Saturday, April 22nd on Zoom, we have Suzanne Russo Adams, who works for Family Search in Utah. She is an expert, and she's going to be talking about Italian parish and other census records. So we invite you to join us on that meeting.
Hi, I'm Paulette Colorocchio. I'm members of both CIAO and ISDA, and I had computer trouble last weekend and couldn't join the CIAO group, so I'm happy to be here today.
Anyone else? I know that there's some others out there probably hiding.
Hi, I'm Claudia Castelli. I just joined actually fall of last year. So looking forward to learning more about ancestry and finishing my tree.
Anyone else?
Hi, guys. My name's Robert. I've been on this journey now going on 3 years. I have an application in process at the New York consulate, and I haven't heard from them in over a year. I'd like to find out if this is typical. Technically, they have a couple of years to respond, but I've gotten zero communications from the Italian consulate in over a year.
Okay. Any other Chow people out there?
Hi, I'm Margaret Bierman. I don't know if you can hear me.
Yes. Okay.
Hi, I'm Laura Gorretta, also from Chow, and really am looking forward to this session. Thank you so much for presenting it.
I'm Bill Foley in Pittsburgh, in the middle of dual citizenship.
Okay, well, I'll go forward from there. Thanks, everyone. Again, I thought I would start, John, do you have that? There you go. So the presentation, hopefully everyone can see it on their screen. We'll start with the first page. I thought I'd give a little background history of Chow. There you go. We started in 2008, as Stacy Murray pointed out. The history actually goes back. I was presenting at a genealogy conference here in Westlake, Ohio, back in 2007. Stacy was in attendance, and we thought, we knew there were a lot of Italian clubs here in Cleveland, but there weren't many that specifically focused on Italian genealogy. So we decided to start our own group. We were lucky because just later, and a couple months later, there was a presentation by John Coletta at the Western Reserve Historical Society on Italian genealogy. So it was a good forum to get our name out for this new group that we started. So again, we started in 2008. We started as a group called Point, and Point was a group started by a physician and his wife out west. His Point is pursuing our Italian names together. And they basically started as a database for Italians looking to, research their family tree. And when we found out about this group, they had started chapters all across the country. And we were the 29th and also the final chapter of Point that started on a national basis. So basically they distributed a newsletter with our minutes and whatnot. So that's how we started as Point. Around 2013, early 2014, Point disbanded. The doctor who founded the group retired with his wife. So we changed our name to a catchy name, the Cleveland Italian Ancestry Organization, AKA Chow, which we started in 2014. And we've been meeting, since 2008. Our semi-permanent location is Independence, Ohio's public library. We meet every other month. When Independence is not available, we scramble to find other locations, but we do meet every other month. Typically, when we do meet, and like many groups, we've recently gone to hybrid meetings, so that's helped to expand our membership outside of the Cleveland area. But typically, when we do meet, we discuss genealogy topics or any other matters really related to Italian culture, primarily genealogy. But we have, like I say, typically we have speakers come to our group. If not, we have what's called an open forum where we try to help each other out. Folks are at all different parts of their genealogy journey. So we try to help, like I say, help people move along and find some sources for people who've hit roadblocks and whatnot. So that's what we do typically during an open forum meeting. In addition to that, we've met, we do some social events together. We have an annual potluck lunch, which is pretty popular. You could just imagine with many Italians getting together to make food for an event. It's just an abundance of food. So it's a great event that many people look forward to that we typically have in the summertime. We also get together maybe 1 or 2 times a year at a local restaurant and get together for that. And also, as I alluded to at the beginning, last year was the first time that we participated in the annual Columbus Day Parade in Little Italy here in Cleveland. It was a great event, and we hope to participate.
Yeah.
We hope to participate in other events going forward. You can move to the next page. There's several resources that we utilize. Again, we're here to help each other out. We're all amateur genealogists, so we're not professional. And some folks, we will kind of lead you in the right direction, would probably get you started and help you out through the process as much as we can, but we won't take you from start to finish. However, we do have a list of genealogists that we have utilized in the past if you're interested in doing that. So there's two options, getting some help from our group and kind of doing it yourself with our help, or using a genealogist that could help you through the process. So we have those resources as well. But we do have our most established resource is our Facebook page, the Cleveland Italian Ancestry Organization /Chow Cleveland. So check that out if you're on Facebook, and like that page, and it's filled with information going forward. It's kept up by our webmaster Eva Chirko. We also just recently, very recently, started a members only page. So we're kind of working on that. We'll have maybe some different content on the members only page. We also, as I mentioned, and again, thanks to you guys, we have a new website, which is, you could check it out if you'd like. It's definitely work in progress since it just started. Oh, lost the PowerPoint. John, you're on mute. You said something, John, but you were on mute. I couldn't hear what you said. Oh, there it is. Okay, the website.
Here's the
sure. There you go. Yeah. John, do you want to take over for a second and just talk about the website a little bit?
Sure, of course. So as part of the ISDA Chow partnership, we created a website for Chow. And so obviously, I know folks will have a lot of questions today. We'll answer many of them. Anything that goes unanswered, well, obviously, you can reach Chow through the contact page here. We have their email, phone, and some contact fields. However, so starting from the beginning, here is the Chow website and a little copy here to define who Chow is. That's connecting Italian Americans to their histories through far-reaching genealogical research and discussion. And if folks are interested in joining Chow, it's $20 a year. And here are the some of the membership dues details. And of course, I know a lot of folks will be interested about the resources. So Tom and his peers have put together some links here in the resources page, where if you're either beginning your genealogical journey or deepening it, a lot of these links are great resources to get that started or to continue on. So this is the URL is chowcle.com, and you folks are welcome to check it out.
All right. Thank you, John.
Let me jump back over to your PowerPoint.
Okay.
A second.
Sure.
There we go.
Okay, great, thanks. There's the new website link, as John mentioned, chowcle.com. Also, if you want to email us, if you're interested in finding out a little bit more, getting more information, there's our email address, the clevelandchow@gmail.com. And then we also have a quarterly newsletter called Genealogy Giornale. Special shout out, she said a quick hello earlier. Margaret Bierman is our editor for our newsletter. She does a fantastic job. She's also taken on the responsibility of maintaining our website. So double thanks to Margaret, and again, a shout out to her. So the Genealogy Giornale was something we just started in 2021. We had 2 editions, and then we've expanded the next year, last year, to 4 editions. So we try to do a quarterly newsletter for folks, chock full of information about our group, about genealogy tips. There's a letter from me typically, some great stories, genealogy stories. So it's worth checking out. Now you get that as we only send that to members. And as I'll skip to the bottom one real quick, as John kind of alluded to, annual membership is $20, and that entitles you to the quarterly newsletter. And we're also start working on maybe having some content on the private Facebook page as well that you'll be able to access for $20, a great deal. And then the one, just to jump up one bullet point there, we've also, similar to what I mentioned to that point started to do way back when. But for our local people, we've maintained a database of Italian towns that people are researching, Italian surnames, of both current and some former CHOW members. Typically people immigrated, and when the immigrants came, they ended up in the same town. So you'll see maybe some people that obviously are from the same town, also maybe the same surnames that they're researching. We found many cousins in our group just from looking at the database and finding out that information. So it's a very important resource to have, and we're keeping that maintained so you'll have access to that as well as a member. So those are some of our resources. Let me just mention too, one last thing before we jump to the next slide. I mentioned John, who's John Villillo is our new vice president, and Eva Chiro, who's our social, we'll call it social media. She was webmaster, but now we'll call her more social media person, maintains our Facebook page, and sets up all the great dinners that we have when we get together a couple times a year. Margaret, who I mentioned, is both the webmaster and our editor for our newsletter. Linda Erlenbach is our treasurer. And then Stacy, who was on at the beginning, is our program chair, and she was the co-founder of CHOW along with me. So just wanted to mention those folks. Oh, one more person, our recording secretary, Connie Sanchetta, who's been around since the beginning, like many of the folks have been since the beginning of CHOW, and she's been our recording secretary. Obviously an invaluable role to me and to the whole group. So she maintains the minutes for a lot of our meetings, and among other things. So you could flip to the next page. So what I thought I'd do would be, and we're just going to scratch the surface on this because it's a whole presentation in itself. But what I thought I would do would just give you a quick primer on finding your Italian ancestors. Many of you maybe have started on this process already. Some of you may have not. Over the years, I started a little over 20 years ago. Really in earnest, I started when I was much younger, but really got the ball rolling maybe 20 years ago. And a lot of the records back then were microfilmed, so you have to go into a Church of the Latter-day Saints facility and look at the records there. Now so much more is at our disposal on our home computers, so we could do a lot of research at home without having to go to the library. But as is for most things, you got to start with what you know to find out what you don't know yet. And for Italian research, obviously the town of origin, or the comune, is the most important starting point. So if you have that information, half the battle is won. And then you could sort of research records. They're grouped by the different towns or comunes. So that's where we again is a great starting point. If you don't know your town, all is not lost. You could check passenger lists. Naturalization records are just chock full, and they're all in English. They're American records. When your immigrant decided to go through the process of being naturalized, the records that you had there were just chock full of information, including the town of origin. So you could find that there. Passenger list, you've heard of Ellis Island records. Most of you probably have. That's when the immigrant came to the United States. You'll see on the passenger list the town of origin. So that's something you could find too online through Ellis Island records. And it's interesting. I have a close friend that if you're not 100% sure of the town, it's good to verify that on the passenger list or the naturalization records before you end up going down a rabbit hole. Close friend of mine, she actually was under the assumption that her family came from a different town in Sicily. And once we checked the passenger list and saw him coming through Ellis Island, we saw that he was actually from another town in Sicily. So that then the next step is to then research the records for that comune back in Italy. So that's the process to get the ball rolling. Something very important to note that Italian women, as they do today, they maintain their maiden names. So make sure you research your grandmother or great grandmother by her maiden name rather than her married surname, and that'll save you a lot of time. So, which is actually helpful, in hindsight too, when you try to find information for your Italian relatives. So, okay, we can move to the next page. So where, I guess, where can you find the records and what kind of records are there? So really the two best among many, but the two best by far resources that you could search for searchable online are the Latter-day Saints website, the FamilySearch.org website maintains many records. The Mormon Church has been microfilming records for decades. So it's just a recent project over the last 10 years where they decided to digitize all the records that they had. So it was a monumental project, you can imagine, with the millions of records that they have. But they have them online, so you could see a lot of the records of the towns. They are also in a partnership with an Italian website called Portale Antenati. I would just Google search that and then it would launch it. It's in both Italian and they do have an English version as well. But they kind of picked up where Family Search left off, and really there's been a handoff pretty much. So many of the records, the Portale Antenati has really become the standard bearer for finding Italian civil records. So that's where you want to take a look first. Some of the records, not all the records are there yet. Some are still on the Family Search website. It's a minor problem is that sometimes you can't do that at home. You have to go into a facility, a local facility, to look at the Family Search records to actually receive them for free. So that's where you would find all your Italian records. What type of records are there? That's listed here at the bottom. There's basically birth records, marriage records, and death records. But let me give just a quick brief history here on how these came about. So back in the early 1800s, Napoleon conquered Italy, the mainland of Italy, which you kind of can see there in the background our logo, which is featured in the background. So he conquered Italy and mandated part of the Napoleonic Code mandated that all the local towns had to keep records, civil records for these birth records, marriage records, death records. So those are all kept at the local town civil ufficio. So they were all kept there and are still kept there. So that's where you would find the records. Now, what happened was when Napoleon was defeated, many of the towns up there in the north where the pointer kind of is stopped record keeping. So there's a big gap there. So if you're from northern Italy, there's a bit of a problem. There'll be a gap in the records. The mainland, the kind of the center part of the boot there, you will civil record keeping continued in that part of Italy. So you'll have uninterrupted records typically till the present day. And then Sicily actually wasn't conquered by Napoleon, but they started civil record keeping around 1820. So you have records into this day as well. So you'll have records from 1820 on in Sicily. The main area, you'll have them going back to around 1809. And then the northern part, you would have them probably early on and then a big gap. Again, the birth records are the Atti di Nascita, not Nascita. I think I pronounced it wrong. I did take Italian many, many years ago, so I apologize for the mispronunciation there. Those are the birth records. And they all followed a very similar form. So you don't have to be, necessarily proficient in Italian to read these records. You'll see them kind of, I don't have an example here. Maybe at another meeting, we'll go into a little bit more detail, but they kind of follow a similar format. And in many cases, they're fill in the blank. So you know where to pull out the information once you get it. So those are the birth records. Sometimes on the right-hand side, the earlier records, they are accompanied by the baptismal record. So you could see when they were, the child was baptized and godparents and some of that information sometimes. And then the marriage records have a lot of information in there because not only you get the marriage records, but sometimes you get birth records of or death records of parents. They're put into a packet called the allegati, which you might find there. Pubblicazioni is just records. They were basically wedding bands that were put on the on the front of the church if a couple was about to be married. So again, lots of information you could find there. And then finally, the least reliable of the three of the death records, because obviously the person providing the relevant information is no longer with us. So some of that information might be a little bit inaccurate, but again, it's a very valuable source of information. So we could skip to the next page. The parish records. Parish records were maintained at the church, and they're much more difficult to obtain than the civil records. Most have not been digitized. And you can find many in the basements of parishes and churches and communes in Italy. That's where they're found. Sometimes it takes a lot of persistence, perseverance, begging the parish priest to be able to access the records. In most cases, you would probably have to hire a genealogist on the ground to possibly, try to obtain the records, but even that isn't a guarantee. As I could relate in my story, I had looked through most of the civil records, but what was lacking were the parish records. So I wanted to, I hired a genealogist to go to the local town in Sicily to research the records. He set up an appointment with the priest. The genealogist got to the parish, got as far as the parish steps, and the priest said, "Sorry, it's too messy down there. Can't allow you in. Sorry, have a nice day." So I got as close as the steps of the church, but wasn't able to get in to look at the records. And the reason I mention this is because those records on the second bullet point, they go back even further. In some cases, they go back to the 1500s. It all started with the Council of Trent, which mandated a lot of parish priests were supposed to keep records of their parishioners, and it would be their baptismal records, the marriage records, and the burial records. Subtle differences from the civil records, but again, pertaining to church ceremonies. And so these records went back to 1500s, not standardized like you would see with the civil records that I mentioned just a few minutes ago. Some of these most are written in Latin or Pig Latin or any language of the parish priest's choosing. So that's it. And the paper, as you can imagine, was not real good paper either. So a lot of it bled through, and so a lot of the information there is very fragile. And if you're lucky to find those, it's a great find of information if you're able to get it. So those are the parish records. So that's pretty much all I had for my portion of this presentation. John, do you want to take questions now on my portion, or just wait for John and Dave to finish their presentation?
Why don't we put questions at the end?
Okay, fair enough. All right, now I'm going to turn it over to John Valillo and Dave Sansone, who are going to talk a little bit about dual citizenship. They're much more, these guys have gone through the process, so they're experts more than I am on dual citizenship. So I'm going to turn it over to John first, I believe, and then Dave will pick it up afterwards. I'm going to go on mute.
Thanks, Tom. Good morning, everyone. My name is John Valillo, and like Tom, I've been a member of CIAO since 2008. And like many of you, I joined the organization sort of a way to find out more about my family history, which unfortunately my parents, my grandparents had all passed, and I needed to find another resource in order to get that family history. So what's developed since then is I have actually found living relatives in Italy, and just returned this past September from a trip to the region where my family is from, in Campobasso and Molise area, and met my cousins for the first time. So it really has been very beneficial to be a member of this group and to be able to fill out the information of my family history. So we've been members that long, and after a few years, we started hearing about this dual citizenship and the possibility of obtaining that so that you could be a citizen of both Italy and the United States at the same time, and also be able to look into the benefits of being a citizen of Italy and pass that on to our children and our grandchildren. So typically, to become a citizen of any country, it's typically by birth within a country, or by descent from a parent who's a citizen of a country. But to be able to obtain dual citizenship with Italy, there are 3 different methods. And I don't always get the pronunciation correctly, but the first one is Iure sanguini. That is by blood. What that means is that the male line can transfer citizenship without limit to the number of generations from the formation of the unification of Italy. That was created on March 17th of 1861. So if you had an immigrant ancestor who was born after 1861 or was alive at the time of the unification, you can trace your eligibility back to that ancestor and go forward and basically obtain the documents that are needed in order to apply for citizenship. So in my case, it was my great-grandfather who was born in 1870. He immigrated in 1905. He never became a citizen of the US because he passed away in 1917. So therefore, every descendant of my great-grandfather is still a citizen of Italy, and you basically have to obtain all of the documents of birth certificates, marriage certificates, death certificates, all of these that we're going to talk about a little bit later, of every descendant from that immigrant ancestor in order to apply for citizenship. So that is one way. The other way is, or one of the other two, is to marry an Italian citizen. If you do marry an Italian citizen and you live in Italy for 2 years, then you can apply for citizenship there. If you're remaining outside of Italy, you have to wait for 3 years before you can apply for citizenship. And again, there's other requirements. What I am talking about is very, very general, and there are a lot of specific requirements depending on your situation. But again, if you do marry an Italian citizen, that does give you the right to apply. That doesn't make you a citizen right away. And you also now have to pass a language test and get a certificate that you are proficient in Italian. The other way is through naturalization. You would have to live in Italy for 4 years in order to be naturalized as a citizen in Italy. We thought, okay, these are the ways of becoming a citizen. Why would I want to do that? So there are a number of benefits of becoming a citizen, and among them are the ability to work and reside in Italy, as well as the other 27 countries in the European Union. So you become a citizen in Italy, but you can live and not worry about having to get visas or anything else in order to live in any of the other European Union countries permanently. You could have access to medical benefits, including free health care. I always tell the story of the friend of mine that went on a tour. He was not a citizen. He was only there during the time of the organized tour. He had a heart problem, went into a hospital in Rome, had to have a stent put in. The tour continued without him, came back to Rome to go back home. And to pick him up, he came out of the hospital. They gave him a bill for $35. So the healthcare system is premier in the world, and it's something that is eligible. You are eligible to receive as a citizen. You can have access to educational benefits, including potentially free higher education. If you become a citizen, that preserves the right for your children and grandchildren to also become a citizen. And if they want to take advantage of the educational system, that is very inexpensive for them to do so. You would also have access to certain financial investment rights, which may be available to EU citizens. It's also an easier way of obtaining property. You have certain restrictions if you're not a citizen. Of course, many people are buying property in Italy now, but it's easier and paperwork wise to buy property if you are a citizen. And as I mentioned before, you can automatically transfer your citizenship to all children under 18. So when you obtain your citizenship, you can at the same time request citizenship for your children if they are under 18. If your child is 18 and older, then yes, they can also apply at the same time, but they would have to provide a bit more documentation as an adult. That is probably what most attracted us to pursue this. I started the application process in 2016, I think it was. And John, if you can put slide number 8 up.
Oh, sure, you got it. Hold on one second.
We have two different slides to show you the number of documents that you have to obtain. And this is an example of if you're going through a great grandparent. Of course, you can go through your parent, your grandparent, or great grandparent, like I said, if they were alive or born after 1861. So starting with the great grandparents' documents, you have to obtain each one of those. You have to get an apostille, which is a sort of like a certified document, but it is recognized internationally. So that is something that you obtain from the state Secretary of State's office in whatever state that you're in. Then you go forward, obtain, if your grandparent naturalized, then you have to get all of those documents to show that they naturalized after your grandparent was born. So if they naturalized before your grandparent was born, then they gave up their right of citizenship and therefore cut off the path of any other descendant after that point. And then if they were not naturalized, then the other column is the documents that you have to obtain for not to show that your great grandparent was not naturalized. Very similar to your grandparents' documents. And then John, go ahead with the last slide, number 9. All the way down from your parents, and then your own personal documents to show your birth, marriage, any divorce decrees, and then you fill out the application form 1, 2, 3, and 4. Supply copies of the other documents, and there is a payment for the application, which I'm not sure exactly what it is right now because it does change year to year. I think it was about $230 when I applied. And there was a comment earlier that somebody applied in New York a year ago and hadn't heard anything. That is not unusual. There was a recent law passed that did limit the number of years that the consulate can process your application. And that went from 4 years prior. And after this law, it's 3 years now. And I've been waiting, and Dave can talk about this a little bit too. I've been waiting since the year 2000, which was during the pandemic. And it'll be 3 years in May. So I've not heard a response since then, and I don't expect to until May of this year. So it's a brief overview of the different methods of obtaining citizenship, the benefits. Dave is going to go through an example of one way of obtaining citizenship. So Dave, are you up?
Excuse me, my name is Ed Manfredi,
Yeah.
and I would like to add some more to this, if you don't mind. I'm in the process of getting my dual citizenship, but my process started 15 years ago. At the time, my daughter, who's a professional basketball player, was trying to sign on with the Venice Ball Club, and we were told, you know, if you have a dual citizenship, it'd be a lot easier for her to play over in Italy. And we went through the process, and both my wife and I, our grandparents, when they came over, they became an American citizen. Was in my case, as soon as my grandfather got off the boat, he was made an American. A year later, his wife came over, my grandmother. She never gave up her Italian citizenship. And we were trying to get my daughter his citizenship. And we were not allowed to use my grandmother because at the time, they didn't recognize women as having the same rights as men. So what happened was my daughter never got the citizenship. She was denied the citizenship because of her grandfather giving up his rights. So to make a long story short, 15 years went by, and I am now a president of one of the local lodges in Pittsburgh, ISDA lodges in Pittsburgh. I got a new member in, and he was telling me how he became a dual citizen. And I said, when did this happen? He said, 3 years ago. And I said, well, how did you go about doing it? And he gave me all the information. And I contacted an attorney in Italy. And this attorney in Italy told me he's the one who took this to the Italian Supreme Court, where you cannot deny a citizenship because of the mother. And he has won 1,800 cases where like I said, you cannot deny citizenship to a woman, and she could pass that on to her children, just like the men at one time were able to pass the citizenship on. Well, my grandmother came over a year later, and she came over with 3 children. And then 2 years later, my father was born in the United States, in which I found out he is an Italian citizen. Myself is an Italian citizen, and my children are Italian citizens because my grandmother never gave up her right. Now, I started this process about 7 months ago, and luckily I have a lot of paperwork done because I was trying to get the citizenship for my daughter. And right now, biggest hang up right now I have is the Homeland Security Department I have to prove to them that my grandmother never became an American citizen. And as a kid, I remember my dad once a year going down to the post office, registering my grandmother as an alien. I have her alien card. I have all the documents showing that she never became an American citizen. And that's where we're at right now. I'm waiting for the Homeland Security Department to get back to me. And I understand last correspondence I had with them, they are so behind. They're processing paperwork from January of 2022. And I'm at least maybe 8 months behind before I get this document. But again, it's not a hard process if you have all the paperwork. And luckily, I had the paperwork because of my daughter. And now I am involved with this attorney in Italy who's going to basically present everything to the consulate. And hopefully this will come true for me. This is something I always wanted to be, Italian citizen, dual citizen, and hopefully in the next year, this will happen. Also, another advantage being Italian citizenship, you will be allowed to vote in Italian elections. That is another right you have once you get your dual citizenship.
That's
So
correct.
if you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer some questions about my process. But it's, like I said, it's not a hard process if you have all the papers.
Right.
That's the biggest thing, getting all the paperwork done.
That's great, Ed. Yeah, you are an example of what they call the 1948 rule. That's when Italy, after World War II, eliminated the monarchy. They became a constitutional republic. They recognized the women equal rights, and it's true that you do have to hire an attorney in Italy to file your case and have it processed there because of this 1948 rule. So you're perfect example. Thank you.
Thank you.
Dave, go ahead. You're still muted, David.
Dave, are you still with us?
You're muted, Dave. I think he's on his phone rather than a PC, so that makes it a little bit more difficult.
Oh, and just a quick note as Dave gets situated. In the chat section, I've included a link to the PowerPoint presentation. So if any of you folks wanted to check out the presentation and look at the links within it, just head over to the chat section and click that link and you'll find the PowerPoint presentation.
The two links that are being shown on Tom's slide presentation are very, very helpful. There's a Facebook page that has many, many documents that answer questions about very specific situations, about which consulates to apply to, depending where you live. And also the FAQ link is a different website that has more resources. So I would recommend going to one of those two or both of them to look at some of the resources that they have there. All right, Dave, it looks like you are.
I think I'm ready to go now.
Okay.
Good, thank you. Yes, again, I'm Dave Sansoni. I'm a relative newbie in Chow. I think I've been a member for about 7 or 8 years now. Unlike John, I joined for the food. And the genealogy is a secondary advantage. But seriously, I've learned a lot from the folks in Chow just by listening at meetings and hearing their stories. And so today I'm just.
Dave, I think we lost you again. Did you happen to tap the mute button?
I didn't touch a thing.
I could hear him. I could hear him.
You can hear me? Yeah,
Yes.
It says I'm on. Some people can hear me, some people can't.
Sounds good on my end.
Okay.
Sounds good here.
Okay, thank you.
Very good.
All right, I'll keep going. So where was it? Okay, so yeah, I'm gonna go through what I did in my search for citizenship. First of all, I'm going to respond. I'm going to make a comment about something that was talked about earlier about parish records. I had a cousin who went into the parish of our grandparents' commune in Termini Amarese in the province of Palermo, and had a clerk take her into the records room to look through the books. And she was looking through the books with the clerk, doing, just taking her time looking through the books. And then the parish priest walked in. And as soon as the priest walked in, the clerk closed up the books, and that was the end of it. They're very secretive about a lot of their records, and don't be surprised, as heard earlier, don't be surprised if you can't, like Tom mentioned, if you just can't get into the parish to get those records. So why did I go ahead and look into my citizenship? First of all, I'll let you know that like John, I put in my citizenship papers a month before he did in April of 2020. And so I'm going on 3 years. At the time, they said it would be an 18-month turnaround. And of course, with COVID, everything changed. And so we're still waiting. I went to a meeting here in Cleveland of another group not too long ago, and someone told me that they got their papers into the Detroit consulate in December of 2019. So that was like 4 months before me, and they just got their citizenship. So I'm hopeful that they're about 4 months away and are just catching up now, because they do these chronologically. Okay, so why did I do this? Just because I wanted to be an Italian citizen. I mean, the passports and all the other good stuff go along with it. That's icing in the cake for me. I just did it because I wanted to embrace my Italian heritage, number one. And number two, because I wanted my daughter to apply with me. And she did, along with my my grandchildren. So my daughter and grandchildren are part of my application. I'll get into this in a second, but fortunately, they live in Kentucky, which is also served by the Detroit consulate, as Cleveland is. So we're able to do it together. If you want your children to be part of your application, but they don't live in a state that's part of the consulate that you are part of, they need to put in a separate application. So anyhow, so back to the process. The first thing you need to do is figure out what consulate serves where you live. In our case, it's the Detroit consulate. There are several other consulates around the United States. They're included in the PowerPoint, or in the link that was in the PowerPoint. So that's the first thing you need to do. Every consulate runs a little differently. They manage their programs slightly differently. So what I'm going to talk about is strictly from the Detroit consulate point of view. You'll have to see how your consulate does things. So the first thing I needed to do is determine my eligibility. Well, I actually knew that I was eligible because of the circumstances that I was working with. My grandfather was born in Italy in 1876, came to the United States in 1898, and my dad was born in 1917. My grandfather was naturalized in 1929. So because my dad was born before my grandfather renounced his citizenship to Italy when he became a US citizen, technically my father was still an Italian citizen. So technically that means I'm an Italian citizen. So this process of getting our dual citizenship is actually a process of being recognized for our citizenship that we already have. Interesting point, my dad had 8 siblings. A couple of them were born after my grandfather was naturalized. So you understand then that those cousins of mine are not eligible, at least through blood. So anyhow, so I went back and I knew that I was naturalized. If you go to the Detroit consulate site, the very first thing they have on there is basically a questionnaire that you answer questions about your circumstance and who you're getting your citizenship through. And as you go through the questions, you answer all of them. And when it's all done, it tells you, yes, you're eligible for citizenship through blood, or no, you're not. If you're eligible for citizenship through blood, you hit a link, and that questionnaire that you saw on those last 2 pages of the PowerPoint will come up, and that's your starting point. You make a copy of that questionnaire. In my case, I put together a notebook with the questionnaire right on the front. And there's check boxes on getting all of the information that you need. And so the journey began. Now, the first thing I would recommend anybody do if they're going down this process is to get your appointment with the consulate before you even have your paperwork done, because you're going to be waiting up to 2 years, if not more, to get your appointment to have your records looked at by your consulate. In the meantime, while you have your appointment, you can gather all your records. And worst case scenario, if you go into your appointment and you don't have all your records, they will tell you which records you need or which records you need to change. But the clock starts on your application the moment you have that appointment. So it's very important to get your appointment first and then start gathering records. That would be my recommendation. So after I determined that I was eligible, and oh, by the way, if your website of the consulate that you work with doesn't have a similar questionnaire process to get started, you can just go on to the Detroit consulate, because they're not asking any specific information about names. They're just asking about circumstances. You know, when was your grandfather born? Who is the person you're tagging your citizenship to? When was he born? That sort of thing. It'll tell you if you're eligible or not, whether or not your consulate has anything similar to that. Okay, so the first step was to get the proof of my grandfather's, as mentioned earlier, my grandfather's naturalization in the United States. And you do that through the United States Citizenship and Immigration Service. They'll do one of two things. They'll either tell you that and give you, get you the document to show that your grandfather, in my case, my grandfather, became a citizen and the date, or they will send a letter saying that he was never naturalized. As I said, in my case, he was. So I would go through that process first. Then the next thing I started, and the hardest thing I knew that I would have to do would be to get my grandfather's birth certificate from the Comune in Termini Amarese. And keep in mind that even if you have a copy of your ancestor's birth certificate, you probably want to go back to the Comune to get another copy, because whenever you send your information into the consulate or hand it into them, you will not get it back. So it becomes part of their permanent record. So I would recommend that you get the documents from the Comune. Fortunately, I had a friend, also a member of CIAO, who was in Sicily at the time, and he went to my Comune at Termini Amarese and was able to get the documents directly from them. So that made it easier. Otherwise, you need to write them a letter and request and send them some money in most cases, and request the documents, and they'll send them along to you. So that was the first step, to get those documents. The second step was to get the birth records and death records of my mother, father, my marriage records, a divorce record here in Ohio. Ohio is a fairly easy state to get those records from. We're an open records state. Anybody can request records of anybody, as long as you have the name and the date of, say, a birth or whatever event you're trying to get the records from. In some states, New York, I think, is an example, you need to prove some kind of connection. So then I went ahead and got the records for my grandparents, my parents, myself. Then I had to get them, even though they were certified and stamped, I had to go get them, get the apostille. And believe me, it was hard enough getting the records. I didn't want to mail them to Columbus to get the apostille here in Ohio. I drove down there and I got the apostille on site and took it away with me. So those records I had done. Also, you have to get the records of your direct records translated into Italian. And most consulates have a list of approved translators. I would recommend that you go through those translators because there's a format that they like. And, you just can't, get Uncle Giovanni to translate the records and think that that's going to be okay, because likely it's not going to meet the requirements. So you got all this information, you put it together, I put it in my binder, and off I went to Detroit. It was during the pandemic, so they did things a little differently. Found out when I was going through the records, there's always a glitch. Everybody's got a glitch of some sort. I found out when I went through my grandfather's birth record, my grandfather's name was Filippo Sansoni. When I went through the records, in the birth record has an index on the right-hand side with a number, and then it's got the actual birth record written out in text. Well, in the index, it had my grandfather's name correct, Filippo Sansoni. However, in the text, they called him Giuseppe Sansoni. Well, that was a problem. Giuseppe was his older brother. Maybe they were doing a pre-version of cut and paste. I don't know how that happened, but that was the official name on the birth certificate. So I will say the people at the Detroit consulate were very helpful with this. He said, there's not much you can do about that. He said, but if you will get a record from a letter from the Comune in Termini Amarase stating that there was no record of a Filippo Sansoni born on November 10th, 1876, that by inference, Giuseppe is Filippo, and we will accept it. So that's what I did. And at this point, they seem to be accepting it. And I'm just in a wait. So what happens to your paperwork after you hand it into the consulate? Well, it actually goes back to the commune where you're from. But that's just to record it. They have no say-so in whether or not you're going to become a citizen. That's just to record the information. And so that slows down the process to some degree. But anyhow, that's where I'm at, and that's where I'm waiting. That's what I'm waiting for. Now, one other point. Oh, and I mentioned my daughter and grandkids also applied with me, so we're on the same application. Once mine is approved, they will be approved. We talked a bit about the 1848 case, and it is a little confusing. I'm going to use an example of my friend to hope to clarify some of what that's all about. My friend's mother is Italian, father is Polish. So we went through the process of the Detroit consulate to see if he was eligible or not, because I'm not really sure of all the nuances of the 1948 case. We went through the process, and by using her father, my friend's grandfather, as the descendant from Italy that he was linking to, it said he was eligible. If we had used his grandmother, he would have been ineligible, because we tried that also. So that's kind of a little nuance. He was still working through a male relative. It just happened to be a grandparent, not his direct parent, but it was on his mother's side. And that came up eligible. So let's see.
All right. Well, thank you so much to everyone, and we hope you have a good weekend. And we'll be holding seminars and forums like this in the future between ISDA and CIAO. So keep an eye on your email inboxes, and I'm sure we'll see you all again soon. So thanks so much for joining.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks.